This is the relationshipsupportnetwork.com. And this is our Wednesday night growth group. And it's going to be on self-worth transformation, which we've been on that series. And this particular one is going to be on turning confidence into identity. You know, we talked about last week, and we're going to kind of have a quick review. I know, Casey, you don't know anything about what we talked about last week, so I'll bring it up here on the screen. We talked about a steady confidence is not just feelings. There's a confidence that we have that is feelings, but the problem with that is our feelings are up and down. And so if our confidence is based on feeling, when we're having a bad week, life is no good. And so confidence, it's built on evidence. And we talked about last week, we talked about evidence, and we talked about even collecting evidences. Low self-worth is often, we can become collection of our failures and our mistakes in life. Everybody makes failures and mistakes in life, but you know, it really should be my choice to decide and develop my own identity, not the circumstances of my life, not the people in my life. We make comparisons. Often we make comparisons just on one or two things, like money or a person's handsome or pretty, versus all the roles in our life. I know, like maybe Ashley, you've been in this mother role a lot. I know I would lots rather. I love both of my kids to the moon, but I would rather go to work than stay at home taking care of my kids. Casey, I don't know. I'm not trying to present I'm a bad father. I just said I love my kids, but a lot of times kids can be an awful lot of work. And then in the earlier session that we've talked about, there's a difference in conditional worth versus inherent worth. Inherent worth. Probably the most important people to us are our children. Even especially our youngest children, and they can't produce any income. And, they might not even can run a mile in a certain time speed, but they have inherent worth just because they're our children. And so that brings us kind of to this session today. And we talked about how confidence is built by collecting evidences. And so we want to actually continue and move forward as how can I develop this into my identity? And again, before I go forward, I don't know, Ashley, you can tell me yes or no. Did you do this collecting evidences during the week?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I did.
I'm really happy about that, Ashley. And I bet you could get at least 3 or 4 a day, right?
I can.
Yes. There's things that, you might even be out of your element right now, your normal element, but the different things that we do, you might have cooked a meal, you might have had a talk, you might have played with kids. I don't know. All those different things count. And the cool thing, if you get 3 or 4 different evidences a day, then over a week, dang, that's 28 proofs that you're good enough. It's 28 proofs. And this idea, the second thing we've talked about are war stories. I'm an old guy, and often I hear people talking about their war stories, and their war stories are things they did in the past, especially for people like me that are old, they, they just, I'm trying to, there we go. There's Scott. And we were just talking about war stories, Scott. We talked about it a lot in the first week. We didn't talk about it a lot last week. And so war stories are the good things that we've done. We if we start collecting these evidences, Ashley was just saying, Scott, that she has been collecting evidences, and evidences are proof that we're good enough. War stories are the good things that we've done that we're proud of, and when we start to notice those things about ourselves, then people in our life might start noticing something different about us. And whether that means that we're happier, more confident, not as codependent, I don't know. It can mean a whole lot of different things. I wondered for you, Scott, did anyone kind of notice anything different about you or say something about you this week?
Um, no, one of the kids the last couple of days that I've been nicer than usual. Okay.
Well,
Working. I've been
that's
working on,
always,
not getting upset when they're doing stuff, and try
yeah,
not to just jump on them all the time. Try to just relax and let some stuff go, and
yeah.
so
That's good. Anytime we can get a compliment from our kids, my goodness, I don't know. I don't know if they don't make them anymore or they're out of style or I don't know, but a compliment from the kids are cool things. And
yeah.
so, you know, why do you think that we keep returning to the old person that we used to be? Got any ideas on that? Either any of y'all, any ideas about why we keep returning to being that old person?
I don't know. You're gonna have to tell me because I I try and I always end up back to the same old person with the same old thoughts.
Well,
You're gonna have to teach me on that one.
Well, I am thrilled that you're here. And so, really, we are very much creatures of habit. And so, ways that we've acted, we're all over the age of 7 years old, and at somewhere around there, we start developing these patterns. And so, if you take 30 years, maybe you went through a difficult childhood. I know you did. I know your father, Scott. He's a difficult man. And so, why we keep returning to those patterns is that's who we are. That's the habits that we form. That's the thoughts we form, the defenses that we have a lot in arguments. That's what they might have worked for us once before in our life. So we keep practicing them and we just kind of become these creatures of habit. And so when we make mistakes, it's not that we intentionally mess up. We don't intentionally not do our best, but our lives are busy. All of us have so many things going on, and our brains don't just simply remember information, they remember identity. And so if I secretly believe I'm weak, I'll eventually behave like a weak person. If I believe I'm inadequate, it seems like everything in my life confirms that. In other words, I made a mistake today. I forgot to do this. I let something go. If you believe that you're a certain way, our whole lives tend to confirm that identity. And so identity really isn't something that we find. Identity is built one courageous act at a time. Most people spend years saying, I just need to find myself. but it's not like we're lost. It's we just need to maybe understand ourselves, but identity is something that we build. And our responsible decision casts a vote for the person that we are. I love quotes, and I'm going to give you several quotes here about courage. And really, it's just three, and then I've got one more. But I love quotes, and so the first one I like thinking of is everything you've ever wanted is on the other side of fear. That's by George Adair. And when you think about why I like quotes, because the quotes that I choose, they, for me, resonate with truth. And in my life, my fears have kept me from moving forward. And this one kind of resonates because a lot of times everything I ever wanted really was on the other side of my fear. Second one is life shrinks or expands in proportion to one's courage. When you think about that, your life either shrinks or expands. We can have courage in different areas of our life. This next one's kind of similar. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. This next quote got me through school. It really did. This is a quote by one of our late presidents, Calvin Coolidge. And I really didn't believe when I started my PhD program, I really didn't believe I was smart enough to finish it, to be perfectly honest with you. And this quote really defines who I am, maybe a little bit too much, but anyway, it says, nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful people with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. The reason why I like that is I thought I can be persistent. In fact, persistence almost got me kicked out of school. I had one semester that my professor never did contact me the whole semester. And so I went to the dean of students and I asked for a refund of my money. And anyway, and of course, that didn't fly too good. In fact, she told me, my professor, she was head of the department. She said, I'm a good man to kick you out. You threatened my job by saying that. I said, you didn't contact me. So that idea of persistence, I can do that. I can keep trying. That got me through my doctoral program. And then this thought from my mom. And I really don't know. I used to hear most every afternoon when I came home from work, she would make this statement. And I just thought it was a Tennessee thing. Maybe she thought it was good to tell me. But what she said is, if anyone can do it, you can. And I had a flipping neighbor that was a genius. And the whole class flunked and he made an A. And she said, if he can do it, if Don can do it, you can do it. Anyway, so those two things basically got me through a lot of my schooling. This picture that you're looking at, when our lives are torn down, we find temporary shelters. We find ways to act, ways to manipulate, ways to hide out from our fears. And these shelters, while they don't really meet our needs, if you look at these three shelters that are on here, they're not very something to be confident in. They look cold. They don't have a bathroom in them. But these shelters have some level of comfort. And our comfort zones become permanent dwelling. And even if you look at these dwellings, you think they're dwellings that cause isolation. They cause us to be stuck, anxious, depressed, fearful. And we settle in those comfort zones. The comfort zone, I've got here defined on the screen, the comfort zone and a growth zone. And the difference between the two is the comfort zone, it really does feel safe and familiar. But like we talked about earlier, it keeps us repeating the same old pattern. One of the, I've got a little magnet on our refrigerator that's got this quote on it, and it's a quote by Neil Wash. And he said, life begins at the end of your comfort zone. And I found an awful lot of wisdom in that, because every time I step out of my comfort zone, I make mistakes. Every time I step out of my comfort zone, I become a little bit more of the person I would like to be. You look at this other circle, it contains the growth zone. And there's things that don't look good about it. There's a level of uncertainty. That's uncomfortable. There's a level of risk, but there's confidence there that we build. We think, I've never been able to do that, and now I can. It develops confidence, resilience, and new skills are built. You know, we don't grow by avoiding confidence. We grow by managing challenges one step at a time. Confidence is not built on feelings, it's built on actions. Confidence is built by taking actions. And each time we step into that growth zone, we gather another evidence, another war story that we are stronger and more capable than we once believed. So this principle of acting before you really feel ready to act is common. It's a common way to build a real security. And so some things that you might think of is, what are some of the things that you would like to, that you've been waiting to be ready for? You might think, how long have you been waiting? Maybe that's how long have you been waiting to feel confident in your life? And so maybe there's this, we talked about last week, the word hesitation. And hesitation, when we look at the hesitation in our lives, that really means the fears that we have in our life. And so, you know, have you ever done something that frightened you, but later it became easy for you? Scott, I'm going to pick on you. I think one of the things that you have been so successful in your life, and it's the biggest evidence, in my opinion, is your sales when you were a food rep with U.S. Food, Scott. And I bet when you first started that, I bet you were you'd never done it before. Was you kind of a little afraid?
Yeah, I was terrified because I had to go into new restaurants every day and meet the owners and the chefs and talk to them. And I did that for 14 years. And every time I did it, even after 13, 14 years, I was still nervous and scared every time because I just never been confident in myself. But luckily, they had a good learning program, so I knew what to do and say. So the skills kicked in, but the confidence was never there.
Yeah.
Like you said, always going back to that old person is I never could get past that. I'm so just self-conscious still about myself. And I don't have confidence in anything in myself. And I always go back to the same, even when I'm doing good, I still feel it underlying there, you know?
Yeah. And it's really time to shed that skin, so to speak, because, what we do when we pull back is we don't really become the full measure of ourselves. Um, I really think I remember the words of Einstein said that we use around 10% of our brain. And I thought in college, maybe I could study a little bit more. I think I used 12 to 15% of my little pea brain. But, we don't have to, we build those level of confidences. You might never have got to that level, Scott, but you made very big money back then and you won some very important trips. And so, the courageous action that you took was just going into the stores. Once you walk into a restaurant, the confidence in your skills as a chef. I talked about your skills today with a client, Scott. He was a chef, and I, the once we step in to the situation, sometimes nature just kind of takes over. There becomes, we kind of develop this identity ladder, and we're probably all someplace on this ladder. And what I want you to see about this ladder is we might be someplace on it. Maybe we're at the bottom of it, or maybe we're at the top. But the whole point is we've talked about gathering evidences helps us to move up the ladder. The bottom of the ladder, that's who I used to believe I was. Probably not good enough, like you said, Scott. Wonder if I fail. Wonder if everyone else is more capable than me, and on that first step, that's a little bit uncomfortable, but maybe it's okay. I don't have to be perfect, but one small step is still progress. That's all I've talked about. I'm not talking about us jumping in the middle of the river. I'm talking about putting your toe in the water. And so the middle of the ladder says who I am practicing becoming. You know what really scared? I had to change not insurances. I changed medical providers. Some of our hospitals in Nashville, I know y'all probably don't know this, but in Nashville, some of our hospitals have stepped up to the insurance companies and said, no, we aren't going to take that amount of money. And so my insurance, which I always have insurance, but I had to change it last year because of this one hospital, and I had to change it this year too. And finally, I just decided I'm going to change doctors. I'm tired of changing insurances every year. And so no matter where you are on this identity ladder, every decision that I make changes who I become or who I remain. I'm just going to repeat that. Every decision I make either changes who I become or who I remain. So therefore, it's each decisions. And this idea of becoming evidence collectors is something that we need to do every day because, like you mentioned, Ashley, you missed the first comment, Scott. Ashley said she's been doing this. And if you think about it, Scott, if you just working with the kids, Scott, just working with what's happening in your life, you make many decisions during the day. And some examples could be I kept my word. I remained calm. I exercised. I prayed. I listened. I finished something. I handled disappointments. These are identity deposits. That's what they are, is identity deposits. And so, it doesn't have to be I made X amount of income this time, because what we looked at last week was, no, that was 2 weeks ago. We talked about expanding the roles in our life. And in America, we tend to focus on finances and positions and prettiness and I don't know, I guess ugliness. That gets me. And so, we tend to focus on these things, and we miss all the rest of the evidences that we truly have. The roles as a parent. Wow. What is more important than that role? Yeah. One of your evidence of seeing your daughter make a something, Ashley. I don't know, was it make something to eat or something? I couldn't see the rest of it. A gratitude list. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's good. It's good. They don't have to be big things. Like Ashley just mentioned, a gratitude list. Absolutely. Absolutely. I I I struggle with this multiple sclerosis, and I have cramps every night in my calves and in my feet. I woke up 3 times last night with my calves cramping, and it almost makes me cry. It hurts so bad. But I still rode my bicycle today, my tricycle. Sorry about that. Sounds funny to say a tricycle. I think I just called it a trike. It sounds different. But kind of the different things that we do. We had sessions today. I do things to continue to add and grow in my life. So, here's some of the questions that I kind of thought I'd bring up some questions here. I mentioned to y'all earlier, I'd kind of like to have a little bit more discussion. If you feel comfortable, you can unmute yourself and answer these. And this first one about what identity, I know, Scott, you've really expressed very much. What identity have you been carrying for years, Scott? What I
Just not just not believing in myself and just being down on myself, just that I'm not good enough.
and so I want to go through this, Scott. I think I know where this started, but where do you think this first thought came from? And if it was about me, just tell me. Where did that identity start with you?
Uh, I would say back when I was young in school.
I really think that's what I was thinking. Do you remember what the teacher, who she was, or what happened?
No, I remember in like 7th grade, I went to the office and told them I wanted to drop out, and they called mom. Mom said no.
I think it's much earlier than that.
Yeah, I think it was pretty early. I don't know. I kind of I struggle with some things in school, and
Yep,
and that's just what's I stuck to myself. That
that's right.
I just wasn't good enough, and and that maybe I was different than everybody else, or
Uh-huh.
and I was always down on myself.
Yep. What I think it was, in my mind, it was somewhere around third grade, was that you'd been determined to have ADHD. You kind of were like had ants in your pants all the time. And something happened and a teacher put one of those like a dunce hats on your head. And I think you had to sit in the room or something like that. One of the dumbest, worst things she could have done. There's nothing dumb about you, Scott. You're a very smart man. And in some areas of your life, you are really smart on fossils and rocks. Uh, I don't know if there's anybody equal to you on that. On cooking, on being a parent now, the patience that you have with your kids is amazing. And so that's probably something you've been carrying probably since the third grade. And it's not the truth, even of who you are. It's not the truth, Scott. And what small decision you might could make this week would be to believe that, to trust yourself. I mentioned to you before, if I were to ask you, we're coming to your house in a few weeks, and if I were to ask you to cook a dinner for us, I have no doubt it would be one of the best dinners I've had in a long time. But you trust yourself in that arena. But in other decisions, you don't trust yourself. I think in making decisions is one area that we don't trust ourselves often. Thank you for answering that. This next discussion series is about maybe in these sessions, has your definition of confidence changed? What do you think? Are you kind of with me on that sheet of music about maybe confidence needs to be more than a feeling? What happens to a surgeon if he wakes up in the morning and didn't get enough sleep? Maybe he went to the 4th of July fireworks, and it took us an hour and a half to drive 3 miles from where we went to the 4th of July fireworks. And so that if the surgeon is depending on his feelings to do a brain surgery and he didn't get enough sleep, I wouldn't want to be lying on that operating table there. So has a definition of confidence started to change a little bit in your life? Kind of either send a chat or respond. I kind of wonder if I'm not getting through, or maybe confidence is still just a feeling. What do y'all think? What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, I think I've written down some stuff on my evidence list too, and
Cool.
and I'm trying to keep looking at it every day at that way instead of my emotions and my feelings, because it's the first thing that happens when you're not confident or down on yourself is your feelings. So I've been trying to bypass the feelings and write down the positive things that have happened, that instead of feelings. It's just a whole nother way to think, so it's not easy. But if you put some thought into it, I can usually get one or two things written down. So that's a step in the right direction. So
I think so. And Ashley, you were talking about your evidence list. I saw it pop up and it popped away. Ashley, I don't know, but I know you
That's
were talking.
okay. I said, I think the evidence bank is helping me change the definition of confidence. So I guess through like positive action, I feel like giving myself credit for the things that I'm actually doing instead of focusing on what I want to do is helping me. Like just get like I still do, even though I want to do more things, that doesn't mean I'm not doing anything now. And I forget to give myself credit for those things, I think. And maybe even my partner, because, we've been so focused on what we need to do and what we want, like what Eden needs. And we forget to give ourselves credit for, you know, our evidences respectively and together. Like we built a business during COVID. Like that's when we started planning all of this, and now today, like we have a decent company, and it was really really tough for a long time, and it wasn't enough, for us to depend on solely. So there, we had to work multiple jobs, my husband mainly, but it's just been there's been this constant, I think, like just focusing on that, and the evidence bank has really helped me stop and kind of be in the moment.
Good.
And yeah, I think it'll be a good habit for me. Very good.
Good words, Ashley. I think it would be a good habit. And so if it's helped a little bit, that's the start we're looking for. That really is, because that's how we make changes. One small decision, maybe even kind of backing up when you're fearing to do something, and maybe the idea of, wait, I have proven myself multiple times. I am good enough. I need to trust myself. We have to, when you think of, if you came up with 3 or 4 evidences a day, if you multiply that times 30, 40, 50 years. My goodness, that's a lot of collection of fears that we've collected, and a lot of basing our confidence, our lack of confidence in ourselves because of our fears. We become these collectors, like I said, of fears instead of collectors of our confidence. Ashley, y'all have built a good business, and it's one you need to be proud of, and it's one that is taking care of y'all now. But this is the fact of what we're trying to teach here, and it lies right here. It says when worth becomes tied to feelings and conditions, self-worth feels uncertain, because feelings and conditions are always changing. But what I'm beginning here is not a quick shift, but a steady one. I'm learning that actions shape my sense of worth, and I can build value through consistent daily practice as I live by the vision of who I want to be. It is never too late to rewrite your story.